This podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Check out everything related to Batman and the entire Bat family at the BatmanUniverse.net, including news and original content related to comics, movies, television, merchandise, video games, and more. Also, check out some of the other unique podcasts that TBU has to offer. Consider supporting this podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 can go a long way in supporting this content that you enjoy. Look for a link over at thebatmanuniverse.net to offer your support now. And now, on with the show.
Nike.
I thought about letting that go for a while, but I thought that was probably not a good idea.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
and now go, jeez.
Rob, you need to put an editor's note in here that this is the 5th time I've tried to say the sentence, but the fates conspire against us. All right. Yeah. So, I think I would not have liked the Robin 80th as much if I hadn't read...
You don't like...
Get right into it. I'm your host, Rob Myers. Welcome to episode 109. We're celebrating the 80th anniversary of Robin, and this is the first 80th anniversary special that Terence, Ryan, and myself are going to do for the show. We're on all social media platforms, the BatmanUniverse.net, Batman on Films, BatmanPodcastNetwork.com, and primarily you can find us on Facebook and, of course, Twitter at ELTD Podcast. Like I said, Terence and Ryan are here. Terence, how are you doing today in North Carolina? I screwed that up last time.
Got it right. Yeah, the bad Carolina. No. I'm doing good. How are you doing, Rob?
Doing well. And our other North Carolinian, Ryan Haas, how are you?
I'm okay.
He's just okay.
I'm just okay. I think everybody's just okay this week. If you're just okay, boy, you're ahead of the curve this week.
That is right. So we need something uplifting, something bright to take us out of our Contagion coverage. Your
puns upon puns, Rob.
Puns upon puns. It's going to start off very cheesy.
10 o'clock.
It's 10 o'clock. So it's just going to get crazy. And if you're out there, Pete Vera, we already know you're already having a couple, so we're trying to catch up with you. So we are talking about the 80th anniversary 100-page spectacular that just came out this past Wednesday. So it'll be about a week late from when you're hearing this. But, of course, the celebration of Robin that DC just put out.
Hey, before we get into that, can I say something?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, well then. Wow, Rob, you get mean after 10 o'clock.
I do.
You're like a gremlin. Don't feed him after 10. What is it? Don't feed him after midnight.
Don't feed him after midnight. You're good. You got a couple more hours to really turn into an ass.
Yeah. So I'm trying to find it. I was looking up. Ryan and I haven't been on a podcast together since. Well, it aired or it came out in November of 2019. So
was that the 100th?
Been 5 months. No, it was Robin 25th 25. My dog's going for the cord again.
It was the Robin's 70th anniversary.
Yeah, 75th, right?
Yeah. So, have I had a chance on a podcast to congratulate you on your?
No, I'm keep interrupting. I was making a dumb joke. I was like, "Oh, it took a pandemic for all three of us to have clear schedules."
Yeah, and not just in Contagion in real life. But I can't remember now. I'm famous for like sending you guys texts and being like, "Hey, have we talked about this?" And you're like, "Yeah, last episode, Terence." I'm like, "Oh, dope." But I don't know if I congratulated Ryan on his fitness and weight loss from. Because I was trying to I found the picture you sent of you and Crypto, the Wonder Dog.
I met Crypto. I met the real Crypto. Yes, because I went to New York Comic Con last October.
Was that October? So maybe I did. Maybe there's October. Like the last.
You
episode,
did in text. You didn't in text, but I don't think it was on a show or anything.
Yeah, because honestly, this is what really happened. No joke here. You sent us this picture of you and Crypto, and I didn't recognize you, and I thought it was like, honestly, you looked so good. I thought it was like just some guy who's on like some CW show. You look like a CW.
Oh man, what a compliment!
And I was like,
this is a Crypto and his hot model.
I was like, why? Well, it's a little weird, Ryan.
Is that Superboy?
This picture of this. Yeah, I was like, it's a little weird. Ryan sending us this picture of this guy, this actor with this dog, but I guess it's Crypto. Maybe he couldn't get a clear shot of just the dog. And then I look back, I'm like, wait, that kind of looks like Ryan. I'm like, is this Ryan? Did he get in shape? And so then I think I texted you. I'm like, is that you? Did you so congratulations on that.
Yeah,
man. You look like a CW guy now. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, yeah, I don't like and I think we talked about this. You were like, well, you don't really have that many pictures of yourself online that often. So like the one or two I saw was what I remembered, and then all of a sudden he texts us this picture of Crypto, and I was like, what? Yeah. So
this is all going to go to his head. He's going to start going on podcasts with his shirt off, like,
oh god,
podcast.
I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. But 75 pounds is no joke. So
that's awesome.
Impressive.
Meanwhile, I got a treadmill in my living room. I'm like, man, there's a lot of dust on this thing. I need to get on it.
Yeah.
But we're not going to talk about my non-weight loss. We're going to talk about Robin's 80th anniversary. So, did any of you, like there's 12 people in the room, did either of you get a chance to read this beforehand, or did you read it pretty much off the shelf? Start with Ryan.
I had the opportunity to read it beforehand, being a person like that does things for Batman on Film, and we get access to comics early. But for this one, there's like a twofold thing. First, there's other stuff going on this past week that and second, it is kind of a special issue, and for stuff like this, and I just wanted to. I wanted to get the hard copy, even though it was going to be hard to do. I mean, so so when this came out, so like we had some other BOF friends that read it, came out, and they were giving us some feedback and early thoughts and stuff. But I'm like, don't spoil it, don't tell me everything that happens, because I wanted to read it. I want to go to the store and pick it up, and even though there were some difficulties in doing that this week, I did it. I went to my comic store, and I did get the curbside comic book delivery thing going on. So that was fun. If you check out BOF's Instagram, I posted a picture of the 2 copies I got, along with 2 of my favorite Robins in action figure form. So the covers I got, I mean, we'll get more into it, but I got the 90s Drake cover and the 40s Jim Lee cover. I was trying to get I think the 2010 cover with all the Robins on it. Is that 2010?
Yes. Yep.
But they didn't have that one, so I just got the two copies. But yeah, I picked it up, physical copy. I tried to do it the most responsible way possible, so I could read it in my hands. So
nice.
That's what I did.
Terrence, what about you?
Well, I had this buddy named Dan who worked for DC Comics who was getting me all my comics for free. And
Jerkins?
Oddly enough, no, Didio, but he just stopped sending them to me a couple weeks ago. I don't know what happened. I'm going to have to give him a call and see what happened with that. But no, I have no connections, no inside information. I have no way of getting it beforehand. So I just picked it up off the shelf like everyone else.
Yeah. A ditto, and I think just being the podcast host, I was getting them for a while through the BatmanUniverse.net, which can still be done, but at least as far on my end, it's a little more tedious to try and get them. So I'm like, I just go back to getting them at my local quote-unquote shop, which I've said on the podcast before isn't a shop. I have a pull list service from a guy that used to own a comic book shop that now has a gym where there's gymnastics going on. So because of everything going on in the country, that wasn't going on, but he's having like private lessons with 1 to 2 people at a time from like safe distance and, all that type of stuff, just so the girls or whoever are still want to work on some tumbling can still do that in a safe environment without being around X number of people. So usually the gym is cram packed, when I go in to pick up comics, and he's very kind of it, stops what he's doing, comes over, puts my books down, and we'll do whatever. So I texted him like, are we still doing comics? If not, I said, it's just a comic book. We can let them pile up and I'll get them whenever. He's like, no, you can come to the gym. So it was really weird being in the gym when there's normally like 60 to 70, 80 people in there, including parents watching, their kids do all their stuff. And there was like 4 of us in this big, huge gymnasium. And, he set the books on the table, paid through PayPal. So there was no exchanging of money. It's just really, really kind of bizarre. But I got 5 covers. So I got the...
I'm shocked. Sucker.
Sucker. I got...
So can you... I mean, we need to talk about how this event got split up into 2 weeks, because originally this was supposed to come out last week when we had some other goodies that came out. Right.
So last week I picked up, because this got, like Ryan said, this got sent back a week. So last week was supposed to be the whole thing. That's when some of us were lucky enough to get posters of the 2010 variant. Covers a big poster size, but Detective Comics reprint number 38.
Some of us got posters.
Yeah, some of us. I didn't.
Not me. Yeah,
his initials sound like Terence O'Neill. So Detective Comics 38 reprint came out. Then for the dollar comics, Batman 428, which is the death of Jason Todd, came out, and then our boy Tim got a reprint in the dollar comics of Robin #1 miniseries by obviously Chuck Dixon. So those came out, and it was supposed to be in tandem with the 80th anniversary issues, which got pushed back a week. So that's why some people were like, well, these weird random Robin reprints came out. That's why those were there. So the covers that I got, because I'm a sucker, I got the Jim Lee variant cover. I got the Tim Drake, the Stephanie Brown, the 2010 with all the Robins, and I got the blank variant, hopefully to take to conventions when those come back around again, to either get autographs and or sketches on the front and back of the cover. So that's why I end up doing that. Kind of wish maybe I'd have picked up like the Lee Weeks just for a reader copy, but I don't need to spend $60. $50 was just enough. So that's what I did. Let's just get right into it. 3 of us have already kind of talked about the covers. Ryan and I did that on a previous episode, and then Terence and I talked about the covers too. So I think we pretty much got the feel for what the covers are.
You think you did. You don't know him like I do. He manipulates, pulls strings, anything to get what he wants.
I thought we had the same goals.
Things change. I changed. The game's over, Batman. I quit.
What's the matter? Lost for words. Expected more. I'm hurt.
Joker sent me the film. I saw him kill you.
Don't you dare lie to me! How long did you wait before replacing me, huh? A month? A week? I trusted you!
Yeah! We did it! We aced him! I set him up, you take him out. 1-2, huh, Batman? Ugh.
You'll be fine.
Of course I will. You train me.
What's your name?
Carrie Kelly. Robin.
Is this what you wore in training?
It's what I wore when I went on patrol.
The only thing it's missing is lace trim and a sun hat.
Chicks dig the car.
This is why Superman works alone.
So let's get right into the first story that is written by Marv Wolfman, drawn by Tom Grummett, with inks by Scott Hanna, and then other names that I'm probably going to butcher. But those are the big names on this first story. And right off the bat, I thought this started out really strong, like a very, I don't want to say paint by the numbers. It just felt like a very classic story right from the get-go. And seeing Tom Grummett's name on the book, I was really hoping like, oh man, he's going to draw Tim Drake. And he's actually drawing a Dick Grayson Robin story. So before we get into the particulars of it, which is the basic gist of the story, is you find out it's, and again, spoilers, we're going to be talking about this in depth. By the time this podcast has come out, I would assume most everybody is going to have read the issue, but you find out it's Dick Grayson's 18th birthday. He is essentially a man now, and Batman is kind of on him for maybe jumping the gun a little bit here. You know, you need to wait on my call and all these things, and a little bit of pushing back and forth. And this, off the mic, Terence was talking about, you know, some things that maybe retconned or whatever. A lot of these stories take place in amongst other history aspects of all of these characters.
Like they're trying to fill in the gaps of some of, and through multiple continuity shifts. And it's almost like you have to take your mind back and imagine that these slot into those continuities.
So this almost feels like a little bit of a retcon, and I will have to probably put an editor's note in later. But the issue, I think it was actually Jason Todd's first issue post-Crisis. And you will probably get a few of these in the episode, as I didn't have all of the notes correct, bad podcaster. But the issue I'm talking about is June 1987, Batman, The New Adventures, as it was called back then. But Batman 408, it's the introduction of Jason Todd that you'll hear me say. And it's also when Dick Grayson is forced to leave being Robin. Okay, back to the show. Of Dick Grayson getting shot by the Joker and essentially getting fired, like, I don't want to Robin anymore, and then he gets, you know, Jason Todd, which seems like 2 hours later. This almost feels like a retcon to that story, that it's a mutual Dick leaving the cave. He realizes that the shorts aren't working for him anymore. He needs to be his own man, rather than there be this big falling out where it's like, screw you, Batman, I'm out of here, DC Universe Titans. This is more of this is my next logical step. So what did you guys think about the first story and other little aspects of this that you guys might like? Let's start with Ryan on this one.
You hit the nail on the head when you said classic, because that's the first thing that I thought when I started to read this, especially when you have somebody as storied as Marv Wolfman on the book. But the cool thing about this is that the first villain you see in this is that they're fighting is Zaz, and traditionally that is more of a 90s. You didn't really see him until we had Tim Drake, right? Like,
right.
Zaz wasn't really around even when Jason Todd was around, was he?
No, he was created by Alan Grant, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, Grant and Breyfogle.
Yeah. Like in the 80s or something, probably,
yeah.
Right?
Late 80s, probably 88, 89. Probably closer, pushing to 90.
Right. So at first that's kind of weird, but when you think about it, it's kind of cool, because this can be viewed as like the last Dick Grayson as Robin story. So to have that natural, to have Zaz in there as like a natural bleeding point in terms of like, oh, this is just at the edge of that his time as Robin. So it's kind of crossing over into the villains you would see with later people that inhibit that mantle of Robin, right? So like that, I thought that was actually kind of a cool thing to actually put it in kind of a time frame kind of thing. But overall, I thought the story had a cool setup, a cool payoff. A lot of them do in this book. They because they're all short. They're all shorter stories, so they can fit a bunch of them in this book. And I thought the way it ended was kind of neat, like how it how Batman was kind of doing things on purpose.
Yeah.
Because he knew full... I mean, the whole thing is like Batman knew full well what he was doing the whole time, and it's just part of the evolution of their characters and their relationship.
Yeah. Terence.
Victor Zsasz' first appearance was in 1992, Shadow of the Bat #1. So,
Shadow of the Bat. There you go. There
all
you
right.
go.
I looked it up, though. I didn't know that from memory. But I remember that story very clearly, and I can't believe that was his first appearance, because it had this really cool scene, spoilers, where like someone gets murdered and Batman thinks Zsasz did it, and they like know, well, he's got to have a fresh mark if he's the killer, and Batman like searches his whole body and can't find the mark, and then Batman leaves and Zsasz sits down and it's on the bottom of his foot. And so I always thought that was cool. So overall, I think I would not have liked the Robin 80th as much if I hadn't read Detective Comics 1000 and Action Comics 1000 and Flash 750 and Wonder Woman 750, because those issues kind of informed me of what this would be like, knowing that it would be a whole bunch of short little stories out of continuity all over the different, histories of DC, different times, different continuities, different eras of the character. So from that going in, I knew what to expect. So this, I really liked it. My first thought was Tom Grummett on the art. I'm like, no, don't waste him on a Dick Grayson story. He needs to be on Tim Drake. It needs to be Dixon and Grummett. But then after seeing the art, I really liked his take on the Dick Grayson Robin. I loved his Batman in this. It was different than his Batman on the Robin 90s run. It was more like kind of a amalgamation of the 80s Batman with the 60s, with the Super Friends. So I really liked that. And I thought it was really pretty awesome that the very first story right out the gate has Robin in his pixie boots and the short shorts and the classic costume, and has Batman with the oval, and it's classic. It's not the, hey, we're going to retcon it and put Dick Grayson in the original Tim Drake suit from the start kind of thing.
Or the new 52 original Robin thing. Yeah.
I thought it was just awesome for the classic. So overall, I really liked this first story.
And what I thought was really kind of I was more shocked, I guess, was having the kid get shot right in the shoulder, like almost.
Yeah, with bloody and everything. I'm like,
bloody and everything. I was like, holy crap. But it almost went back to like, wow, Batman was actually telling you to slow down, and Dick has that look, and Grummett draws in really well of like, oh my gosh, did I get this kid shot? And has a nice little button put on it when he, Dick makes mention to, say, hey, I like your shirt and all that stuff. When he's in the ambulance to say, oh, I got this shirt because yours was all sold out. I thought, oh, that was kind of a cool touch, but I was really surprised, like, wow, right off the bat, we got a kid shot in this first issue. But I thought it was really cool to see. I had the same thought you did, Terence, of like, wow, I can't believe we're wasting Grummett on a Dick Grayson story. And by the end of it, I wanted a full issue of Grummett doing, this era of Dick Grayson Robin. So I really enjoyed it, and getting to see him do the disco collar Nightwing right at the very end as Dick's driving away from the Batcave, Wayne Manor. So I thought that was a really good way to open up this first story, and I think that's a good mark to start on. That first story can grab you, especially when okay, I've got 90 more pages to read. I hope the first story, or I hope the second story is as good as the first story. So any other comments on Grummett's and Wolfman's first story before we go into the next one?
Yeah, you know what I really liked about it too is it kind of showed Batman as a parent, as like the father to Dick Grayson or Robin, and how sometimes as a parent you've got to kind of do what's good for the kid, even if it's the kid doesn't really quite realize it, or when they ask, "Oh, can I just have cookies for dinner?" and you have to say, "No, you got to eat some vegetables," and or you got
that candy. I want candy, Daddy. No,
exactly.
No.
Or sometimes you got to do some like psychological, like manipulation to kind of push them in the right direction. Batman couldn't just say to Robin, hey, it's time for you to go out on your own. It's time for you to leave. You kind of have to do it in a little different way. So I really like that aspect of the story.
So the second story is a name that we've been saying for quite a while on this podcast. And again, this was another name where I was like, all right, they're going to do this Robin 80th anniversary book. Surely we're going to get Chuck Dixon and Tom Grumman on a Robin story. We did, just not together. And knowing that, I was trying to do some quick math, that I think Chuck was on Robin longer than he was on any of the other books, including Detective Comics, which I can't remember if the Robin miniseries started first before he got Detective. I think Detective might have actually been first, but probably not by much, if I'm remembering correctly. So
I thought that Robin 1 was pretty early, because they had to go through Robin 1, 2, and 3 before they even started the solo series.
Yeah, but I was also wondering, like, the solo series, well, the miniseries predates Nightfall, and obviously the solo series is during Nightfall, so I'll have to go back to probably another editor's note in here somewhere, folks. But yep, another editor's note. Now, I think Terence does say it in a little bit, but I think we kind of get it garbled, so I just wanted to give you the official word. Yes, I was right. Technically, if you count all four, if you count the 3 miniseries, Robin 1, Robin 2, Joker's Wild, Robin 3, Cry of the Huntress, and then the 4th volume is the Robin ongoing series. So Dixon was writing Robin longer than any of his other DC properties. So Robin Volume 1 miniseries number 1 came out on January 1991, and he didn't get Detective Comics till the following year of May of 1992, and that would be Detective Comics 644, and eventually he would pick up Catwoman, Birds of Prey, and Nightwing. So Dixon has more time writing Tim Drake than he does any of the other DC Universe characters. So there we go. There's that. Now back to the show. Talk about continuity. The Dixon story, and that is drawn by Scott McDaniels, which this was so cool to see him. Like, this is the Nightwing book team back in. So if we couldn't get Dixon on a Tim Drake story to get him on a Nightwing story, I was like, all right. So the story title is Aftershocks, and I should have said that the Marv Wolfman story was called A Little Nudge, but we got Chuck Dixon, Scott McDaniel, and Rob Hunter doing the inks here, and this is set in the Cataclysm Aftershock storyline, which goes into No Man's Land, which I thought this was not a stroke of genius, but this was just something really cool. Rather than create something brand new, Dixon found a way to go, well, this might have been another adventure I was going to tell about Dick during my run on Nightwing, but I never got to do, so let's just revisit an aspect. And I want to dig through the comics to see, is there a moment where this would have taken place? Oh, silly Rob, you do not read enough Chuck Dixon comics. You already know that answer. So, yes, there is a moment where this exactly takes place. You want to talk about a 20-year jump or more between continuity and stories that Dixon could put this right back in. So in April of 98, in issue 19 of Nightwing, when Cataclysm is going on, and it even says in this issue, 100-page giant, that in the story, and I'm flipping through it here, I just sent a message to Terence and Ryan while I'm editing this, Dixon is so masterful at what he's doing. So as the event happens in Cataclysm, Nightwing is running out and helping as many people as he possibly can. So in the first few pages of Nightwing, you see all the devastation of the bridge falling apart. So by the time Dick gets home, gets suited up, he is heading back out into Gotham City through the harbor and passes by, you guessed it, the bridge. The bridge is down, and he can normally take the bridge, but it is blocking his way to Bristol. And this is on page 10. So you get a shot of Nightwing in the Batboat zipping right by the bridge. So you would have to wait till 2020 of March to find out that at the end of 19, through the adventure that's going on here back in 1996, the last words Nightwing says is, happy endings aren't going to be easy to come by. Just too tired to run. Let's see what else Gotham has in store. So then the next issue in Cataclysm is actually, I just closed the book, says Cataclysm continues in Batman 553. So then you're going to follow Batman in his book, but you don't really catch back up with Nightwing till a few issues later, till he's already done a bunch of other things. So this is where Dixon places this story in the 100-page giant. That is amazing, that little panel that they had of Nightwing needing to cross the bridge, has to take the boat around the bridge, then decides, you know what, I'm going to turn Dick back to the bridge, and let's see if there's anybody there that he can save. And we're just going to wait till 2020 to tell that story. Amazing. Okay, back to the show. But this is during the cataclysm that had hit Gotham City, and it's Nightwing trying to get to the Batcave or get to another part of Gotham City, and happens upon this ambulance and a car that has been trapped down in the bottom part of, looks like a taxi rather, on the part of the bridge, and Nightwing is trying to get there to help rescue somebody in distress, and takes care of the medic. She's about to fall, grabs her, fights some thugs. While all this is going on, you find out there's a woman in the car, and much to the surprise of Nightwing, by the end of his story, that when he goes to catch up with the woman back in the car, there are not just two of them in the car, there is now three. The woman in the car has now had a baby. And one of the reasons I believe that Ryan has put John Blake action figure up in his photo for Batman on Film is the final panel was the medic saying, "It's a boy. She wants to name him after you," referring to Nightwing. And what does Nightwing say, Ryan?
Nightwing says, in no certain terms, he says, Robin works, right? So you can name the kid Robin. Ooh.
Or John Blake. So I think in our text his back and forth, did we just witness the birth of John?
I like that name.
John Blake. So
Robin.
You should Robin, you should use it. So what did you guys think of Dixon revisiting Cataclysm for his story and just his Nightwing tale overall? Let's start with Terence on this one.
May 1992. Was that before or after the first Robin miniseries?
After,
right? Because that was Chuck Dixon's first Detective Comics, 644, May 1992. So I thought that was after as well. It's got Tim Drake on the cover of Detective 644, Electric City Part 1.
Electric City, yep.
Yeah. So actually, I love this story. I was not a huge Nightwing fan. I didn't dislike it. I just wasn't reading that book like religiously. I'd pick it up here and there, crossovers. But when I saw the art and I saw, Dixon and McDaniel back together again, it just, I really liked it. It brought back like this feeling of when I was a kid and I would watch old timers games, like the baseball, the Yankees had the old timers games, and you'd see these players come out like Joe DiMaggio and Mickey Mantle, and they were like in their prime, and they're catching a ground ball and throwing it to first or something. This wasn't going to make their highlight reel. It wasn't their greatest moment ever on a baseball field, but there's something just so cool about seeing them again, seeing them out there. And now that I'm older and I'm seeing players that I saw, as rookies come up and play their whole career, and then they're out there in old timers game again. They don't run as fast, and they can't quite get the ball, and they can't their hit's not going to make their top 10 hits. But it's just awesome to see him again, and that's how I felt about a lot of these issues. Like I'm not going to say this is my favorite Nightwing story. It's not going to make the top 10. But it was awesome to see it. Awesome to see it again. McDaniel's draws like the fluidity. There we go, of Nightwing jumping around. It really highlights his acrobat background. So Dixon put a lot of that in this story, which just works perfectly. It wasn't trying to do too much with it, and had a great twist ending when Nightwing first comes over to the vehicle and he says, "Oh no," something like that. Or I thought the twist was going to be it was some kind of villain, like it was the Joker or something somebody we knew was in that vehicle, and for it to be a birth and for Nightwing to be a part of that life starting was just a really great twist. And then I've heard people say you make your own continuity. So if you'd like to make your own continuity, that could be, the start of something that leads into the movies, which is pretty cool. So, again, I love this story. It was really fun to read.
Ryan.
Yeah, I think, Terence, you're absolutely right when it's like it's not the best Chuck Dixon story ever, the best Scott McDaniel art ever, or whatever, but it is so awesome to see them again and to see them writing a story again. And I think it works so well. And Dixon, like most of his stories, it's all character focused, character first. He nails Dick Grayson's personality and Nightwing, effortlessly as usual. And I really liked the incorporation of all of the acrobatic stuff too. And it really, the part that showed that off the most to me was when he ends up doing the big swing with the car, through the bridge. I'm like,
yeah,
that's such an acrobat. It's like all of his acrobat stuff plus what he's learned as a crime fighter with Batman. Those are like two things coming together really well. I just thought that was really, it was a thing that shows that through action rather than him just saying it out loud. So those cool kind of character moments, I think it's just a perfect blend of writing and comic. It's a perfect like little nugget of comic book storytelling. I think that Dixon is so well suited to deliver because those kind of things he can always make cool little set pieces, and of course the twist ending is just awesome. I had the same thought when they were he says name him Robin. I'm like, oh, maybe it's like this is the in continuity John Blake, just like we've got like a semi in continuity Carrie Kelly. Mm-hmm. Like maybe this could be the John Blake of DC continuity or something like that. And so later on, years from then, and Batman Beyond era, you're going to have like a John Blake or something.
I loved that. Was my favorite sequence too, of him taking the hook or for the crane, jumping off with that, and the dialogue with Dixon writes, one thing's for sure, this is probably going to hurt and probably scratch. So I'm thinking, oh, he's thinking the car, and like, no, he's actually meaning himself. So I thought that was really cool. I dug this story. So like 2 for 2 right off the bat. I thought, man, we're off to a really good start. And I liked Terrence's analogy of like the old timers game, like, hey, let's see if they still got it. And this isn't going to be the one like, oh boy, this single story made the book. It's a wonderful addition to the book, and I'm glad Dixon is on it. And it would have felt wrong if Chuck wasn't part of this book. So let's go into the third book, Devlin Grayson, written by Devlin Grayson, and I'm reading backwards, and because I want to say Dan Jurgens. Dan Jurgens didn't write this one, he drew this one. So I gotta say right off the back, if anybody, probably only me, is still picking up the Walmart 100-page Giants, the Teen Titans book has turned into the Titans book, and Dan Jurgens is drawing and writing that book as he has been now as far as the Titans, and this is the team that's in that book. So this instantly feels like, hey, this is another one of the 100-page Giants. So I half wonder if this wasn't planned for a Walmart 100-page Giant, because the news stories in there are not really long. It's usually one news story and then a bunch of reprints that are in there. So the basic plot of this, and I'm trying to remember it's the Hive. So, which has been kind of a theme that Jurgens has been doing in the Walmart book, that the Hive is fighting the Titans. It's appearing to be a training exercise, and the leader of the Hive is pointing out, like, why didn't you do this? And, look, you let Tempest do this thing, and you let Troya do this thing, and dehydrating agent is now buried in the bottom of the ocean. You mean to actually tell me it's hydrating? So the gag that is in this is all of these Hive agents, I think I said Hydra once, Hive agents, I get my universes crossed up, are all getting a lecture from the leader guy. The one piece of relic that he manages to have a hold of, he's holding it up and says, well, I stole this from Star Labs while you guys were out distracting the Titans. I was able to get a hold of this thing, and one of the Hive agents takes a look at it and says, only to find out it's actually, surprise, Dick Grayson underneath the mask. And while Dick is ready to just walk out the front door, that now that you've berated all of your henchmen, they're probably really not going to stop me anytime soon because they're all kind of ticked at you. So Dick walks right out the front door with the thing and says, you might want to, I'm just spitballing here, but you ever thought about trying to build up your team by maybe ordering a pizza instead of yelling at them? So that was the rough synopsis of the Devlin Grayson and Dan Jurgens book. This one, I think, felt a little flat for me just because it felt more entry level. Like I would bet money this was part of the 100-page giant for Walmart, and they decided, hey, we're just going to throw that in here. So this is kind of a throwaway. It's not setting the world on fire. I feel like this would have been on the back of a box of Pop-Tarts in the 80s, like just this real basic paint-by-number story, just to give you something to read while you're eating your bowl of cereal. You hop on the bus and you go to school. So what did you guys have for this one? Let's start with Ryan on this one.
Yeah, so I thought I'm pretty much right on the same wavelength as you, Rob. As soon as I got into this, and as soon as it was like Titans, I just kind of started to tune out, just because I'm not a huge fan of that group and that book and those stories. I'm an entry level Titans fan. I mean, I love Teen Titans and I like the Titans TV show, but the Titans comics and the Titans like 100-page giant stuff is just not something that hasn't really grabbed me. And as soon as I open this, I'm like, well, that looks like one of those 100-page giants. So I just kind of was like, okay, well, yeah. But where the story did get me is that it got me at the end when it was like, oh yeah, okay, so Nightwing was there the whole time, and that's like a cool like little twist at the end. But it did feel like deliberately retro 80s, like you're right, like on the back of a cereal box or Pop-Tarts or whatever. It's totally fits that vibe. It seems like that's got to be what they were going for, but because of that, it didn't really speak to the legacy of Robin as much as I wanted it to in a 80th anniversary 100-page book. And I was like, man, I'd rather have another story in here instead of this that speaks more to the anniversary nature of the character.
Yeah. Terence.
Yeah, I probably like this more than you guys did. I was not a huge Titans fan until Rebirth. I really liked the Titans Rebirth series, and this wasn't exactly from that continuity, but it was kind of similar. You know, it's hard to write a story when you only have 8 or so pages to write, and then to write a team book where you've got to like introduce all these characters. So I thought it was a clever way to do that, but it did seem a little out of place in a 80th Robin anniversary. I would have liked to have seen more of the classic George Perez kind of Teen Titans as opposed to the Titans, but it's still, I still liked it. What I really liked about it though was seeing Dan Jurgens' art. I know it says he does the layouts and Norm Rapham does the finishes, which I'm not really sure what exactly that entails, who's doing what. But we haven't seen a lot of Dan Jurgens' art. I didn't realize he was doing the Walmart books. But like, he's been writing the Batman Beyond. He's wrote, Action Comics, Rebirth, all the way up till Brian Michael Bendis took it away from him.
Didn't he do a lot of art in that? Or he did a lot of art.
He did none of the art.
He actually did a lot of art in that last arc of Green Lanterns. He wrote and drew like that whole last 10 issues or something.
Oh, did he?
Like that.
And did he draw it? I know he was writing it, but
he's currently writing Nightwing too right now, right?
Yeah, he's Rick Grayson. He's trying to fix. Actually,
I'm sorry. It's a celebratory issue.
Why wasn't there a Rick Grayson story in this
book? Exactly. Well, that's what I was going to talk about later, about what was not in the book. So I'd like to table that for a little while, but it was interesting. There was no Rick Grayson. He did better with the Rick Grayson mess that he was handed with than a lot of other people could, but it was still a mess and it wasn't good. I didn't realize he was drawing Green Lanterns, but that's been a while. But I love Dan Jurgens' art. I think it's like this great mix of, the Silver Age with the 90s. And so to see his art, I really liked. And I thought this was a kind of a clever way to tell us who the Titans were, even though that does seem a little out of place in a Robin 80th anniversary book. But it is, again, cool to get all original stories. I know Robin and Rob, I think you have this, Ryan, Mike, the 75th anniversary of Robin 2 years ago. I can do math. 5 years ago. Gosh, 2 years ago when it was 5 years ago. That was all just reprints. So I would not say this was bad, but I'd put it on the lower end of the stories in this collection. And speaking of the low end, Tom King.
Yeah. So our next book is, Terence segued us into that one, is a Tom King story. So I had a bitter taste in my mouth at the end of Forever Evil when we unmasked Nightwing, and now he's going to be an agent of Spiral, and he's going to be Agent 37, blah, 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 blah. But I had gone back every now and then. I'm like, I've got all these Grayson issues. I had to read a few of them. So I did read some of the Grayson issues, and I'm not going to say they're horrible. It just wasn't my cup of tea to read. But that being said, I actually don't mind this story. Again, this is part of Dick Grayson's history. It is his technical 80th anniversary. So getting this era of Dick is okay. Again, like we said with the Jurgens, I would have rather had another adventure of him as Robin doing something, but this wasn't bad. The long and the short of it is Grayson is with Paris, and they're going around the world as they normally do on their spy missions, and get caught up in a war going on with Gorilla City. And while they are fighting, Dick is constantly saying, okay, rule number one that I learned from my mentor, and Dick would put all these rules out that he learned from Batman and then apply them in a situation of, what they're going through. One of the rules, if I go to the first one, it says, Batman says, plan everything, Robin, know exactly where you're going to land. And Dick is going through all these scenarios with her until the very end, when the war with the Gorilla City is just about ready to start, and Grayson and Paris are part of this war. You really aren't quite sure who they're going to be going after, which is really not the main part of it. But the last rule is that Batman tells Dick when he's Robin, this is ignore your mentor, do what you do best, be Robin, which of course that turns into Grayson saying, you be the best Paris you can be, which is a nice little thing. You can learn a lot from the people before you, but you've got to take all the stuff you've learned and turn it into work for yourself. And at the end of the day, maybe just be the best version of yourself. So I didn't mind the story. This, I think, would fit seamlessly right in to the Grayson series. The art is right on point. This is one of the issues or stories in this book that looks like it was lifted right out of the Grayson series, where I was doing some double takes. I'm like, have I read this already? Because the art just looks absolutely, on point from what it was. And the art team is, Tom King and Michael Janin, if I'm saying that right. So this is called the lesson plan for this one. So I didn't mind it. I'm not jumping up and down about it. I think for me, entertainment-wise, it is probably right on point with the previous Titans story. It's not the worst thing in the book. There's probably other things I would have rather had in it, but that being said, I didn't mind it. Let's go to Ryan with this one.
So this is written by Tim Seeley and Tom King, and it's whenever the whole Grayson thing, Agent 37 thing happened, I tuned out completely when that happened. And that was also in the time in the New 52 where I pretty much had just dropped everything except for Batman and Detective. I was just kind of like, I was just naturally was kind of done with it and had tuned out a lot. And I think Terence has spoken to that a little bit too. I think we both kind of dropped out of a lot of books around that time, just because it was like, well, it's not Robin. I don't really care to read it because it's not what I want to read. But having said that, well, this story is also kind of like it's textbook Tom King also, where it's like something's happening over and over again in the story, and you're not sure why, or you're not sure what they're getting at, and it's like they're saying this thing, and then they're contradicting this thing, and then they do that again, repeat until you get to the end of the story, and you're like, oh, well, that makes sense. Now I have to reread the whole thing over again, and now it makes sense. Like, that is like 98% of Tom King stories, but but in this case, it kind of worked for me. And it worked for me in this context because of that Batman and Robin connection. Like, if it was just a Grayson story, I'd be like, whatever. But because they had the Batman and Robin flashbacks in there, I was like, okay, I was down with it, because
same here.
I'm like, okay, that works. That works a lot. And it was cool to see each of those repeated points speak to something that Batman would have taught Robin, as they progress in their crime-fighting careers. But it was also like Batman teaching Robin how to be Batman, but it was also showing what Robin does differently and what Robin contributes to that partnership, and then how he uses what he learned when he's not Robin anymore. And I thought that was really clever and really cool, and kind of earned its place in the book. But man, it got really weird at the end, where I'm like, what, gorillas and army and what? It just got weird. But in general, it was a cool concept, and I think it worked. But still, it's like one of those things where it's like, we could have another Jason Todd story or another Tim Drake story.
Yeah.
Instead of yet another. I mean, there's too much Dick Grayson in the book. But
so before we get to Terence, are we led to believe that was Dick going to have sex with a gorilla? Because she's pulling him. Because the thing that I had to reread twice is she says to Dick, through the 8 pages I can't seem to get to, it says, I hope those words you whispered to me were true. So I was like, what did he whisper to her? And I can't find anywhere that he whispered anything, and she's like leading him off, and then it just looked like it's the next day. So it was really weird. Like, well, I mean, the bat. It's like, you have to show me what your affections are. Batman says, never get attached, never get personal. Feelings can betray your mission. And what's the opposite of that? So like, I think that's heavily insinuated there. Yeah. So, Terence, what do you got now that I took this in a wrong turn?
Yeah, like the highest praise ever for Tom King on this show.
What was that weird? What was that weird bus in one of those Chuck Dixon episodes?
The P-Wagon, was it, or something?
P-Wagon, yeah.
Which then Quentin Tarantino stole from him for.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. Or no, was it drug car or something like that? Drug mobile? Was it?
I think it's the first one.
I think it's the first one.
Was it the first one? Okay,
yeah,
I can't remember.
I'm almost positive.
Yeah. I was saying, Rob, you the highest praise you've ever given Tom King on this show. Yeah, I didn't mind it. but did Dick have sex with that red gorilla? Yeah, I think he did. Again, just like Ryan said, I wasn't really reading comics. I wasn't reading Grayson except for the couple of issues that Rob made me read to do the, what was that, Robin War crossover series that we did?
Robin War, yeah.
Yeah, so that was all I knew, and it looked like the art and everything looked like it came right from that run. So if you're a fan of that run, you've got it. But it seemed out of place for the 80th anniversary. That seems just like such a little blimp on the, maybe a pimple on the butt of the Robin history. I guess it just doesn't seem like a big part of Robin. But Tom King is a big name, and maybe this is how they got Tom King on the book to do these and revisit his run. And as Rob said, I didn't mind it. It wasn't that bad. And the flashbacks to Batman is what makes this story acceptable. But the next story, I'll let you segue into it, Rob. I like the next one a lot.
Yeah. So I dug this one. So this is Jason Todd, the Red Hood in More Time, written by Judd Winnick and drawn by Dustin Nguyen, who is the only artist to have a variant cover out of this, which I also think is kind of weird. So knowing that he is doing a Jason Todd story, he chose for his variant cover to do a classic, like, psychedelic 1960s Robin cover, which is very cool. It's one I thought about. But this story, More Time, it opens up with Red Hood, sans the Red Hood, running across buildings, racing somewhere. And that starts getting intermixed with a very young Jason Todd in the Batcave giving a present to Bruce Wayne on his birthday, which this is the second birthday story that is kind of in the book, and it's a watch, and the watch is Thomas Wayne's watch that stopped working, and Jason had spent a lot of time, with some help from Alfred, getting the pieces to get the watch to run right, Elmer Fudd there, run right, and they start talking about it needs to be wound, and if it doesn't wind, it doesn't tell time right, and says, by the end of it, well, give it back to me. When I get it finished, I'll give it back to you at a later date. So enough time goes by that this is Jason racing to the Batmobile as the Red Hood to put the box back on, and it is the watch that is now repaired and is running correctly. And it is then paired back with Jason saying happy birthday, Bruce, as a young Robin, and then as Red Hood, and the story More Time. So I thought this was a very cute story, a really cool and just a real personal story, and that innocent moment that we really don't see a whole lot of with Jason Todd. And I've always loved Dustin Nguyen's art. I think it lends itself really well. The coloring is fantastic, and the way he draws Batman I've always thought was really cool. And his young Jason Todd looks like it's almost in the style of Little Gotham, but not quite as overly, stylized. But I thought this was a really cool story. Ryan, what did you think of this one?
So Judd Winnick and Dustin Nguyen, you can't really get better than that. That's a great combination, especially for a Jason Todd story. And I'm not counting pages. It felt like this was one of the shorter stories in the book. Are they all the same amount of pages, or is this just shorter? Is that, I don't know.
I felt like this was shorter too, not counting the the computer like one shot one.
It's 8 pages.
8 pages.
So,
I think they're all about 8. I think the panel layout is so big. You only get like 4 panels per page.
Yeah. But what's cool about that is as a kind of natural break, I mean, it's one of the less wordy stories in the book, but that's cool because Jason Todd is a very emotionally based character. Like, he's got intense emotions and intense things that have happened to him in his life. And so the bigger panels and the smaller amount of dialogue really gets you into the emotional truth of the moments that it's showing you, and it's quiet moments, in the flashback, and then more reflective, intense moments in the present day. And I thought that was a really cool way to put a story. And it kind of, again, in the continuity stuff, it kind of slots it in right in the middle of all the Red Hood stuff too. You could like put that as a little coda, I guess, like somewhere in that story, right, in the original story. So it's cool, and there's some gorgeous artwork in there, just like that, the penultimate page right before the end of the story, like where it shows Batman holding the watch, looking up. That's gorgeous. Like, this whole story really. I'm not a big Jason Todd fan, but this story really worked for me.
Terence.
Yeah, this was my favorite out of probably all the stories in the 80th anniversary.
Nice.
Dustin Nguyen, I just love his art. I think he's severely underrated as a Batman artist, and he's got to be in my top 3 or 4 Batman artists. And his art is so good that I actually kept flipping back, saying are there 2 artists? Because some of the Jason Todd as Robin, like his face and his facial expressions were so different than present day stuff that I kept looking at wow, he did both of these. This is amazing. And I love Dustin's art, especially the scene of Batman in modern time when he first finds the present. That just takes me right back to the Paul Dini, Streets of Gotham, Detective Comics, Heart of Hush run.
Heart of Hush. Yeah.
I love that. And
man, insert this. I can't wait for that Paul Dini Batman omnibus.
Yes. Yeah.
I was actually had a lot of tension when I was reading this because I was like, how is Batman going to react? Like there's hardly any words, and I'm like, is Batman angry that he messed with his father's watch? Like, is he going to say something? Is he going to be, the jerk Batman that we've seen so many times? Like, we've read how he talks to the Huntress, and he had these moments with Jason Todd and stuff. And what is he going to do? And Judd Winnick writes it so well. It's not over the top. He's not like crying and hugging him and stuff, but he's just like, thank you. Oh man, the juxtaposition of present day and modern day, especially the last two panels when Jason Todd says "Happy Birthday, Bruce." It was so good. And I think it ties in so well to the next story, because in the next story, just to steal your thunder, Rob, here, the segues.
Go for it.
It's all about Tim Drake and what he sacrifices to be Robin and all these different opportunities and things he could do, but he can't because he's Robin, where like the other Robins all gain from being Robin. Like Dick Grayson was going to be an orphan and he gains this, second family. Jason Todd was basically, a street urchin. He gains, Damian gains from his father so much that he didn't get, being raised by assassins. But Tim is the one who actually has to sacrifice. He's the one who actually gives stuff up to be Robin, like none of the others. So I thought these two stories, the one that we're about to review now, kind of really went well together to show, like, here's Jason, this is what he gains. Here's Tim, here's what he gives up and sacrifices.
Yeah, so let's just get into this one. Tim Drake, extra credit, written by Adam Beechin and Freddie E. Williams II. I'm a big Freddie Williams fan, so right off the bat, before let's just get into the overall synopsis. Is like Terence is saying, it's about Tim's senior year of high school, or right around at that point, and going into the new guidance counselor and figuring out what Tim is going to be doing, going to like probably Ivy University or whatever. And the guidance counselor is saying, well, you want to get into law enforcement, but even with all your grades and how smart you are, you don't have that thing that's going to catapult you to be able to stand out above the crowd or be the next thing. Are you really into sports? And like, no, I'm not really into sports. Do you do any extracurricular activities? No, I really don't do any of that. Schoolwork keeps it pretty busy. And all of these things that the guidance counselor is saying, well, do you do this thing? And it shows Tim actually doing that, but in his role as Robin, like doing something about science. And Tim's like, science really isn't my thing. But you see Tim operating all the science equipment in the Bat Cave. And then, well, what about sports? And like, well, Tim's not very agile, but then you see him, jumping across things. And what about team building exercises? And you see him part of the Teen Titans. What about outreach? Helping, maybe take care of kids. And here is Tim as Robin battling the Scarecrow, saving a bunch of kids. And all of these things going on. And the guidance counselors and his secretary are saying, it always just felt like Tim Drake is kind of hiding something. There's just something that's not quite coming out. He's kind of undermining his talents, and they just hope he makes something of himself. And I thought this was just a really fun story. And the thing I was going to say about Freddie Williams's art that I really liked in the latter part of the Robin run, especially Search for a Hero, is probably another one of my favorite Tim Drake stories. Is I loved his art, but this is done, kind of reminds me of latter-day Neil Adams in a way, and not necessarily in a bad way, but this feels like this belongs in a teenage Batman versus the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles book that he's doing with James Tynion, because it's done in that style. Yeah. So I have a hard time distinguishing, is this style done on purpose of like, well, this is currently how I'm drawing that, so I'll just kind of slot this in here where it's clearly meant to fit in to the 1 year later. He's in the red and black costume, but is this like the sign of age? Like his art is just a little different. Is it deliberate? I still really like it, but I was really hoping for that classic Freddie Williams. I still enjoyed it. I really liked the story. The art was was a little off from what I was expecting, but that doesn't mean I don't like it. So I thought this was a very cool Tim Drake story, knowing that there's 2 in this book. This is probably my second favorite of the 2, and the next one will obviously be my favorite Tim Drake story of the bunch. But what did you think of this, Ryan?
I thought it was really cool, and I wondered the same thing about the art. I know that early on, when Williams was doing his work on the Robin series, he was just, I believe, early on starting out experimenting with digital art instead of hand penciling stuff. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if he's kind of one of these guys like a Tony Daniel that's always constantly evolving and adjusting his technique and stuff like that. But yeah, it totally did remind me, like you said, of the of some of his more modern stuff, like the TMNT versus Batman, stuff. That's probably a good question. I wonder if he's on Twitter. We should just ask him and see if he has a good response, because that it is a pretty interesting observation. But the Beach and Williams combination is great, and I think we mentioned this off mic, but I started reviewing the Robin solo series for Batman on Film right at the beginning when 1 year later started, which was this team, this writer-artist team.
Yeah.
So it brought me back quite a bit, and I love that. I love this. Probably my second favorite Tim Drake Robin costume. It's really great, and I just thought it highlighted a lot of the best parts of the character in a cool way, because you get Tim Drake out of the costume, having to kind of hide who he is and what he does, but also gets to kind of flaunt who he is and what he does with as Robin. So it really worked for me, and I just like the little point at the end where they're like, I think he's hiding. I think he's holding himself back on purpose, but I don't know why. It's that perfect kind of part of that Robin solo series when they kind of were hitting really good balance of Tim Drake being a kind of a DC's Spider-Man in terms of the teenage high school kid that's a normal kid mostly, but has to get out at night and also be a superhero. So I thought that was pretty great, and I did kind of like that one panel where they had to split Tim Drake Robin between two different Titans teams, so you got to see him kind of in both outfits. I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah, Terence.
Yeah, that was neat, the split, because it's got like Deathstroke right in the back, and the split is right along his mask, which is already split. So that was kind of cool. Unfortunately, in 2006, when Beechin and Williams were on the book, I wasn't reading it. So those are some of the books that I'm going to have to catch up and read.
So we're getting to the next Tim Drake story. This is Boys Wonder, with James Tynion IV writing it, and I've always mispronounced this name, Javier Fernandez, if I'm saying that correctly. So
you put the S on the wrong part of the title,
and I did.
It's Boy Wonders, and you said Boys Wonder.
Boys Wonder.
What do boys wonder about?
To quote Terence, catch me unawares. So,
I wonder.
So this is going back. This is actually a prequel story to James's Detective Comics run. So this is right after Tim has ditched the glider wing costumes, and it's one of the very first things that he talks about. Says, I've got to say, the feeling is good to fly without wings, and why he is wearing this costume. And it also makes reference to why he is wearing the second R onto his chest, because the Prince of Darkness took the job, so he just added the second R onto his costume. So this is in Rebirth continuity. Like I said, this is in that timeline for James, and this is Tim kind of rediscovering himself, being back in his Robin costume again, and is going around to each of the former Robins and kind of getting their perspective on Tim's next big move. Like, okay, Batman has asked me to be back in Gotham. I'm wearing my quasi-classic costume again, and get some advice from Dick Grayson while they're on the top of a subway train, which makes me feel very much like an issue of Dixon that he wrote, where Tim and Dick are on top of a subway having like a a sparring match where they're both blindfolded. So that kind of felt like home a little bit there, and get some advice about Tim of like, do you want to go back to school? There's choices that you need to do. You're the smartest of all of us, and you need to, do what you think what is best for you. And then he goes to work with Red Hood, and Jason's like, no, F him, you're one of the best of us as proteges, and says, you're a good fighter. You need to do this, that, or the other. And, you can make the choices for yourself, and, screw what Batman says. And then of course he goes to work with the Prince of Darkness, being Damian, and Damian kind of gives him essentially the same advice too, and says, what do you want to do with your life? That should be your call. You need to put your best foot forward, and you offer what you think needs to be, not what you think each one of us is going to tell you. So this brings Tim to go to the Batcave and tells Bruce, well, if we're going to put this team together and I'm going to be back in Gotham City, then I've got this idea for the Gotham Knights protocol that he wants to call it, and this is the team that I think we should use. So rather than Batman putting the team together and Batwoman, it's actually Tim going to Bruce and saying, this is the team that I want of, spoiler, Batwoman, you, me, Cassandra Cain, and of course Clayface. So I thought this was a really cool story. This is actually my favorite story of the book, and the Grummet and Wolfman story was a very close second for me, but I think a lot of you know how much I liked Tynion's run in Detective. So what did you guys think about James revisiting the Rebirth era of his Detective Comics run? Let's start with Terence.
Yeah, I liked it too. Probably not my favorite like yours, Rob, but I did really like it. I love the dig about the wings right at the start, and I love seeing I really like this Red Robin costume, and I like Batman finally in the Rebirth costume at the end. It's too little too late. You knew there had to be a story in here like this in the 80th where they kind of talk about each Robin and what they do and what they like, and I thought it was a good, not really twist, but a good take that it was actually coming from another Robin, that it was actually Tim Drake who was kind of giving you the breakdown on each Robin and their strengths and weaknesses. And I liked I guess it's the second page. At the very last panel, he says it's a rebirth, and then right from Rebirth, and you can see the tower that was part of like the Anton First redesign of Gotham in the late 80s, early 90s. I liked it too. If you were a huge fan of the Detective run, a big part of that was, what is Tim Drake going to do? Is he going to stay Red Robin, or is he going to go to Gotham University, or some kind of Rhodes Scholar kind of thing? And then seeing the team at the end was really cool, and it kind of made me want to reread that run of Detective Comics again after it. So kind of made me wish there was a little bit more too.
Ryan,
yeah, this is easily my favorite story in the book too, just because we're clearly huge fans of that run. There's a giant 3.5 hour podcast we all did for Batman on Film, where we talked about every single arc in the run. Yeah, I just loved it from beginning to end, and I love the dig right at the beginning. It basically said, "Boy, I'm glad I'm not in that continuity anymore." It's in my Hank Hill reads comics voice. It's just like, it's great. It's one of those things where it's like something that Jeff Johns does a good job of too, where that Tynion kind of takes here, where it's something the character would say, but it also addresses the continuity, but it also makes sense, and it's all just wrapped up in one thing. You could read this story as kind of a prologue to Tynion's Detective Comics run and not really have anything spoiled for you.
No.
Especially if you're a Tim Drake fan, because it sets up the whole thing. And it explains the Red Robin. It really puts him in a good spot for that series. And that series is so team focused that having this thing prior is really cool, because it's all about Tim Drake and his place in that, and getting the perspective of the other Robins prior to the events of that that arc is a really cool thing to have, and especially later on in that arc, we had we had some flashbacks to this same kind of time period, also, I believe, right?
Yep.
So this would fall right in line with that. If somebody tried to make some sort of continuity spreadsheet of like, read this, then read this scene in this book later in the run. If you try to make it in chronological order or something, it would be cool. And yeah, seeing the whole team at the end, I was just like, dang it. Too bad there's no Azrael in there, but it makes sense because he wasn't part of the team or Batwing. So
that was the one thing I thought, oh, there's not Azrael, but I started thinking, like you said, oh, this is before they would have shown up. But
yeah.
So I thought that was really good. Let's move on to the next one, Stephanie Brown, Robin 4 in Fitting In, and I thought the title of this literally kind of works its way in. So this could kind of fit right in that time frame when Tim quits being Robin and Stephanie Brown comes in, and this is like day one of her becoming Robin. Before she goes out, she's literally putting on Tim's costume, and she has like a Dear Diary entry of what's going on. And I forgot to tell you who the artists were in here. This is Wolfram. I would keep on saying Wolfman. Damian Scott and Brad Anderson's doing the colors. I like the colors. I haven't been saying who the colors is, but the colors are really good in this. And again, this feels like it's right in with the Robin ongoing series, that you could slot this right in there. And she's having a problem with the costume. It's not quite fitting in all the right places, and it's starting to kind of tear in a couple spots because of some batarangs that Batman's like, hey, you got to be on point. And to top it all off, she's getting a wedgie from the costume. Like, can't we make some type of upgrade? So they're giving her a digital scan, and this gives the explanation of why she ends up wearing more of a skirt than everything else, and they're making sure that the breastplates are in the right spot. It's supportive for her. And who's the first person she goes up against? It's Firefly, and they're already kind of putting that in there, which is in the story that Stephanie's really not quite listening to what Batman is saying, but it ends up kind of working out for her. She gets captured by Firefly. She's put on this roller coaster at the fairgrounds. She gets out of the trap, and her and Batman have a discussion later on, like, don't try and make me conform into what Tim is. Let me be my own Robin. If not, then I was already doing this crime fighting stuff before becoming Robin. I can just do it again. And we haven't been talking about some of the pinups, but Nicola Scott does a really beautiful pinup of Stephanie Brown Robin. I think it's the first time she's ever drawn Stephanie Brown. So Robin fitting in, I liked this story. I thought it did well. It serviced Stephanie Brown's time as Robin, and it wasn't a like, oh, we'll put Stephanie Brown in here, but we'll make it a spoiler thing. They didn't pull like a Grayson thing, like, oh, well, we're going to do a spoiler story. And yeah, she was Robin. They literally made her Robin in this story. And she also gets a full cover, a variant cover as well. So what did you think of this, Ryan?
I mean, for a Robin that was only Robin for, 6 months or less?
Yeah, barely. I think it was like
5. Yeah. 5 if you're lucky.
Yeah.
For Robin that had such a short tenure, I thought this was a really cool story because there's not that much room to play with continuity-wise in terms of the stories you could tell, because this one really did come across as a gimmick at the time. I remember even when this came out, it felt like this would be an interesting time period to cover when we get to it on the show. Maybe we can bring in some cool special guests or something for that, 87 years from now when we get there. But I thought this was a cool angle to take to kind of see, like, I mean, it definitely does put Batman in a whole different perspective. It is kind of the same kind of stuff that we get when we see Batman interact with Carrie Kelly, but that's a different Batman. It's an older Batman. This is like main continuity regular Batman, and this Stephanie is somebody that already has a history with Batman as spoiler, it's just and like at this point when she's Robin, does she knows who Bruce? Does she know who Tim is at this point? Surely she does, right? Like she knows Tim is Robin.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, that's good. So yeah, I mean it's interesting. Like she's gone through all this stuff as spoiler. Now she's finally getting trusted as she's finally been let in on everything. But you're right. There are some. If you know what happens to her, all the Robins. Tragedy happens to them, so what happens to her, then you do see some of those things kind of it might get your attention as you read the book.
Yeah.
So,
and you were right. I counted it up 5 months. She was right.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So, but yeah, it had some cool elements to it. It definitely struck a different tone. It was cool that they got the same like artists back and stuff because it. Like some of the other stories, like the like the Chuck Dixon, Scott McDaniel story, it definitely makes it feel like you can slot this right in to the time, and it would make sense.
Terence,
yeah, kind of like what you said about the Tom King story. I didn't mind this story. There's not a lot you can do with 8 pages, so just having like a little bit of how she got the costume was kind of neat. I'm not a huge fan of this art style, although I do think it is cool to see it again because it does bring you back to 2006. But then the pinup at the end by Nicola Scott and Annette Kowalk, that's really cool. I saw that and I'm like, oh man, I wish they had done the story because but, it doesn't maybe. What you can do in a pinup is maybe not what you can do in 8 pages. I don't know, but. Yeah, like Ryan said, she's a tough one because she was Robin for such a short time. But, she deserved a place in this book because of what she means being, the female Robin. And it either had to be her or Carrie Kelly. And that Carrie Kelly story would be a lot harder to do. And they might have even needed permission from Frank Miller or, that whole kind of thing. So it's definitely, I think it's definitely a cool nod. To her, and if you were not quite up in your Robin knowledge and you read this book, which I'm sure some people might do, they'd probably make you think, wait, there was a girl Robin? What was this? And want to know more about this time period. So, but yeah, it wasn't that bad.
All right, we've got 2 books left. Super Sons in My Best Friend by Peter Tomasi and Jorge Jimenez. So this is the classic Super Sons team back together, and this hiccups tonight. This really makes me miss the Super Sons book. That was such a fun book. And Terence and I talked about it off mic with Bendis and Aging of John Kent and all that stuff. This makes me long for this version of the team to be back together. So who knows? And this is from the perspective of John Kent has to essentially write a paper about his best friend, and John is just recounting all of their adventures together as 2 friends, potentially frenemies at the beginning, but as John's writing the story, Damien's always had his back and has always been there, and their fathers have a different type of friendship than the 2 of them, but they have literally become each other's best friends and have each other's back. And John ends up falling asleep towards the tail end of him writing this story about his best friend, and Damien is able to kind of peek at it a little bit, but instead of making fun of him, he says, hey, I'm here. Do you want to go out and patrol the city together? And John can't wait to get in a Superboy costume, and the 2 of them go flying off through the city streets together. So this was a fun story. Again, this made me really miss the Super Sons title, and it made me miss the chemistry that Tomasi had been working on since the New 52, building Damien into this more likable character and giving him somebody like his personality with Dick is really good. And that's kind of what I expected. Maybe a Dick and Damien story, but him getting paired with John, I think just really sets it in the right spot. So yeah, I dug this story. What did you think about this one, Terence?
Yeah. Again, oh man, it was so good because the Super Sons was such a fun title. I mean, when you talk about rebirth, you talk about like just bringing back that fun and that joy and that light to comics, and our heroes not being, just mopey SOBs who hate life and are just a tad better than the villain as they wake up and are aching and pop pills with their whiskey. I'm talking to you, Batman v Superman, yeah. So that's not what I want. So, but I guess we could talk about this too. It's surprising what was not in this book, considering that Brian Michael Bendis has taken the Super Sons and Jonathan Kent in a whole other direction. That to have this in it and not like this just be like a I guess what I'm trying to say is the book really pays tribute to what's come before it and just doesn't feel like an ad for, hey, buy this DC book that's coming out, buy that DC book coming out. So, I commend them to do this and not even, have, a 45-year-old Jonathan Kent, or how old is he now? And then, hey, I had a question.
87.
This might be, off the rails here. On the other thing we were talking about, was Tim Drake, did he quit as Robin, or was he fired by Batman when Stephanie Brown took over?
He quit because Bruce outed Tim to Stephanie before Tim got to. So he was ticked and also kind of meddling in with his dad at the same time. So he's like, screw you, I'm out of here, and just up and quit.
Okay, I couldn't remember. All right, thanks.
Ryan, what you got for Super Sons?
To echo everything you guys said, I could read Super Sons until I'm 100. That, I mean, just, I love that, I love that Tomasi style. I love the way he writes, those characters, and he just had such a good setup. That whole era too, just like hit the Tomasi Superman, and then Tomasi writing Super Sons. It's one of those things where at first I'm like, I hate Damian, and oh man, Superman has a kid, and they're making a book and they're both together. That's kind of goofy. But then you read it and you're like, I love this. This is amazing. They're adorable, and like it's like Batman and Robin, but like cooler as a pair because they're not, and they're opposites. I mean, all the cool stuff that the reason why people like the Batman Superman pairing is apparent in Super Sons. Yes. And it's a whole different angle on it, and it's still really valid, and it's just got a lot of really cool mechanics to that framework that Tomasi gave it. And it was delightful to go back to that for a little bit. Just to go off the rails again for a second, did you guys read the 12-issue Adventures of the Super Sons? I think I made it about halfway through it.
I did. I finished it a couple of days ago, and it's just as good as the Super Sons was. So, like, revisiting it, even after a little pause that they did, I thought, is it going to lose something? It picks right back up. It's as strong as the first series was.
Cool. So, yeah, I mean, it was really cool. And the way that this was written reminded me a lot of the Jeff Loeb Batman Superman series, because when you read that, it's always like you see Batman's inner monologue and Superman's inner monologue during the same situation, so they always have this conflicting dialogue. So you kind of get some vibes of that when you see like Jonathan Kent's when you see his story that he's writing just superimposed over the events of the story here, and it's just a cool pairing. It's so much fun, and it's a shame that we're nowhere near that right now in the current comics.
I mean, how cool is the page of the two of them eating burgers on top of a rooftop? I mean,
I'm like, I want a movie of this. I want something. I want to animate a movie or gosh, that would be such a cool thing to have, like in the DC animated continuity, if they were able to make that work. But man,
you can hear the D-bagness in Damian, but also being endearing at the same time. When he was like,
"Yeah, that's a hard line to get to, right? It's a hard line to take in, but it's perfectly balanced the way that he does it."
Yeah. Well, we've got one more book, Damian Wayne, Son of Batman, in Bat and Mouse. And these are a list of creators I have known who everybody else is, but Robbie Thompson and Ramon Villalobos, if I'm saying that correctly. If I'm familiar with their work, I don't even know I don't recognize them by name, and the artwork looks familiar, but I'm thinking it reminds me more of Frank Quitely more than...
I thought it was Frank Quitely, because I was like, oh, they got Frank Quitely for this? And then I looked up the artist. I'm like, oh, it's not him.
Yeah.
Yeah, or Chris Burnham, who looks a lot... Remember Chris Burnham?
Yeah.
And
I'm kind of... And that's something we can get to at the tail end as we wrap up. So as Terence was saying, they're not doing a whole bunch of stories that, hey, you need to... this is an ad for what's future... is coming in DC. This is the only story that is technically that. This encapsulates events that are going on Teen Titans currently right now between Damian and Bruce. And they're off to a rocky relationship. It would take too long to go through all of it, but some events have transpired through Teen Titans, and Damian is purposely avoiding his father. And this is the first time that, Damian's setting out holograms throughout Gotham City. So anytime that Bruce is trying to keep tabs on Damian, they're always coming up as a hologram, or it's a decoy, or it's something else. And Bruce has finally been able to catch up with Damian, and the two of them take on a series of robots, and the dialogue is the biggest thing, and it's basically all like thought bubbles or thought squares, if you will, of things like questions. I thought he was dead. And then that's from Batman. It says questions, back at it again. That's the problem. Like they're not speaking to each other. In one moment where Bruce and Damian are looking at each other face to face going, this is the moment to say something, where it's that perfect moment in time. If you don't say something right now, you can probably start to mend a bridge, but neither of them chooses to say anything. And because Bruce doesn't make the first opportunity to say something and lets Damian walk off, and Damian's internal monologue is like, well, just like before, silence. And it's also addressing Damian or Alfred Pennyworth's death, and Damian has this device to almost wipe the minds of criminals. Like, rather than rinse, lather, repeat, I'm going to essentially wipe the mind of this crook, so there's no rinse, lather, repeat. They just get to be an empty shell themselves, and problem solved. So this is the only one that says, to be continued in Teen Titans Annual number 2, and Robin and Batman collide. And the trade dress for that one is Damian's Robin costume on the ground, and it says Robin no more ? So much like Detective Comics 1000, the Arkham Knight story in Detective Comics 1000 was like, hey, here's the next thing going on in the current Batman book. In this case, this is the next thing going on in the current Robin book, being Teen Titans. So what did you guys think of the final story in this for Damian Wayne and the closing of the book? Let's start with Terence on this one.
Yeah, this one was okay, but it felt more like an ad, especially with that little ending there. It did remind me a bit of Grant Morrison. I was blanking on his name. I want to call him Frank Miller for a second. The Grant Morrison Batman and Robin run, which I absolutely loved. And I as I was reading it, though, I was kind of like, I kind of would have preferred just get Grant Morrison. But, I don't know how easy or hard that would have been. But I think I would have preferred, a Grant Morrison, either him or that style of Batman and Robin. Give me a Dick Grayson as Batman. If you're gonna give me Dick Grayson as Agent 37, which he was for a little bit, give me one of them as Batman. He was Batman twice, as Prodigal and in the Grant Morrison run. Give me something like that. One of my favorite things about that run was the chemistry between Dick Grayson and Damian Wayne, and we didn't get that. So, if this story was not in the 80th, I would have been okay. If it was just the 92-page celebration of Robin. So, yeah.
Ryan.
Yeah, this one I could kind of take or leave. It's got cool elements. I like the way it opens and closes, and there's some cool gotchas where, Damian thinks he's got the upper hand on Batman, but that's maybe not the case. But is it the case? But you got to read the annual to find out. I mean, that's the part that you could have retrofitted this story to not be a advertisement for another story, and in a book that kind of deserves to be its own standalone thing. I mean, Detective did it too, so you can't really complain that much, but I'm going to because we can get, I don't know how much we want to get into it, but this is the Robin 80th anniversary 100-page super spectacular, and there's a couple more things they could have had in here to celebrate some other Robins than having another Damian Wayne story, or maybe a Damian Wayne story that had a little bit more meat to it instead of it being an ad for the next event or something.
Well, but before we close this out, let's actually talk briefly just for the next few minutes about stuff that you would have liked to have seen that maybe you don't necessarily okay, I would have put this in and taken that story out, like this Damian one and then the Titans story. I think there were two other stories or two other things. Like you had mentioned, where was the cowled version of Red Robin at?
Yeah.
Or
arguably that era of Tim Drake as Red Robin last longer than Agent Grayson?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
See, that's what I'm saying.
26 issues up to Grayson's 21, 19, something like that. But yeah, I thought there were some other things that could have been other creators that have been through the whole history. I know Perez has really cut down on his stuff, but there weren't, in Detective Comics, you got some pinups every now and then, and there was only very few pinups in there, and the last few pages in this book are more of the history lesson of the Robins, of people are like, well, who's such and such. The only
I thought that was cool how it does kind of go through all of those Robins. Yeah, the
only Carrie Kelly appearance is a pinup, and my gosh, out of all the variant covers, the Carrie Kelly is the last one.
Is that pinup the same as the variant cover?
No, it's a different cover.
It's got the lightning strike or something.
Yep,
it?
Yep.
Okay.
It's the one from the Dark Knight Returns, sans the Batman. But this pose is. I'm like, if this is the reason why there's no Carrie Kelly story in it, they're like, all right, we'll give you a pinup. And I think you and I, Ryan, were talking they could have found a way to weave a Carrie Kelly story in here somewhere, and I can fully support that. But there isn't one, and the only other pinup in here, other than the Nicholas Scott one, is by Andy Kubert, which I've always liked Andy Kubert's artwork, and that's all the Robins here, and with Stephanie, Tim, Dick, Jason, and Damian, and no Carrie and no others, but some other Robins, there's no Helena Wayne Robin from Earth 2 during the New 52, or the Dick Grayson of Earth 2 when he was wearing the yellow pants. So there's some different versions. They pretty much stayed main continuity in the book, but, Terence, you had said earlier about, give me something in the Wolfman Perez Teen Titans era. There was really no, and I was kind of surprised there was no, classic 1950s type of, Robin story. It stayed pretty much modern, but I think that's what a lot of these 100-page special type books have done. But what other things were on your guys' mind, just of other things that maybe they could have added or, taken away and replaced? Do you have anything, Terence?
Yeah, like I said, the Grant Morrison run would have been cool. Maybe a Jeff Johns story with Teen Titans, his kind of run.
That would have been cool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was represented a little bit in the what Freddie Williams art, but to have a story, maybe a Young Justice, like the original Young Justice, where it was just Impulse, Superboy, and Robin, might have been a little bit better than, say, like the Dick Grayson versus Hive and Damien Dark story. But overall, like, it's 80 years of history, so it's gotta catch something. I probably would have liked to have seen maybe a little bit more of the Flying Graysons, but that's just me because I love the Flying Graysons. We saw like the newspaper article that he was looking at. The thing I was kind of surprised too is what was not in here, that it wasn't just an 80-page ad for all these DC stuff. There wasn't any really Brian Michael Bendis, Young Justice kind of tie-ins. There was no Rick
that
Grayson.
is a little surprising.
Yeah.
Or Drake. There's not a Drake story.
I totally thought there was going to be a Drake story in here.
Thinking of some of the other stuff going on right now, the Year of the Villain stuff and all that. It wasn't just it didn't just feel like a giant advertisement for other comics to buy. It really did feel like a celebration of Robin's career. So for that, I commend DC. It was pretty awesome.
You got anything, Ryan?
So like the things that jumped out to me was like, the Carrie Kelly thing, just because she's got one main story and she's of course a big part of the Dark Knight 2 and 3, but she's not Robin anymore in those. Because she's really important culturally, maybe not in terms of the appearances in mainline comic continuity, but still that jumped out. The red Robin in with the hood definitely jumped out, but especially because we've had that creative team on Twitter has been voicing their disappointment and not being asked to be part of this, and that is a little disappointing because
and maybe they'll be on the show. Crossing fingers.
Yeah, maybe that'll be awesome. And the other thing that I thought would have been really cool is if they would have done a Batman 66 Robin only story.
I was really kind of surprised in that art style.
In that art style, because they've had the Batman 66 comics. They could have got like that Jeff Parker, Richard Case like team or something like that, and done a really cool pop art type of Batman 66 story that was really Robin heavy. Just because they've got that precedent with their other books right now that they've done, and that Robin is such a huge part of the legacy of the character, and they have comic book precedent now. So that would have been a really cool thing to have stuck in the middle of this book, I thought.
And that would have slotted, I think I would have probably liked that over the Titans story. Because even though, like, yes, Dick's part of the Titans, and I get it, but it's not, like you said earlier, that's not really servicing Dick Grayson as a character. It's more a footnote of like, oh, here's just an atypical adventure that Dick Grayson is having with the Titans, not something that's really overly underlining his importance in the Titans.
Right.
But so for the price point of $9.99, you might as well call it $10. Be it that you bought 5 copies of the book, 3 copies of the book, 2 copies of the book. Was this worth the price point for you? If you're like, all right, I'm just going to go out and buy one cover, whatever they have, this better be worth the $10 that I'm paying for it. Do you feel that you got your $10 worth of story, Ryan?
Absolutely. I thought it was a fun celebration. I'm really behind on my comics, so it was fun to go to the physical comic shop and get it curbside delivered and get a cool cover and get a lot of stories written and illustrated by a lot of comic book legends and have the story slot into these different points in continuity and getting to talk about it with you guys. I mean, I think that's definitely more than worth the $10.
Terrence.
Yeah, definitely.
This is thinking like, I wonder if we're going to do an 80th anniversary show. We'll have to come up with something. And it wasn't even sinking into my head that this book is going to come out. I'm like, I knew it was
for a while
up.
we didn't know if it was going to be like reprints of other older stories or new stuff. Yeah.
And I will say, of the 100-page giants or the 1000th anniversary issues that have come out in the last couple of years, I really dug the Superman Action Comics 1000. I've heard a lot of good things about the Wonder Woman issue that's going to be coming out. The Flash one, I think, is kind of hit or miss. And then this Robin one. Detective Comics, I think, if I was ranking them, Rick Shue, if you're out there, I think I would probably put Robin, Action Comics, then Detective Comics 1000 being like, those are the three bigger ones. And I haven't really read Wonder Woman or the Flash one, but all the fun things about Robin are really encapsulated pretty well through this whole book. And I feel like there were more stories in Detective that I was like, oh, this is a good one. That was all right. This was all right. That was a good one. And I bought way more covers for Detective Comics.
I can't even remember any of the stories in Detective Comics. Now, I read it once when it came out, but I'm trying to think.
Batman's first case, where he's there was like a bunch of detectives. He was following those breadcrumbs through his entire career.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I like that story.
This is over Detective
and the Kevin Smith story we can't stop hearing about. But Matt Reeves isn't original. He just copied Kevin Smith's Batman story.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
I think this is really good. If you haven't picked it up, be it digitally or digital is great to have as a quick go-to, but I think this is one just to go out to your local comic book store when you get the opportunity. Obviously, when you feel safe enough to, I think they're going to have plenty of copies of this, but this is one, if you're a Robin fan like the rest of us, this is something definitely to go check out and celebrate your love for Robin. And maybe while you're home and got nothing better to do, you can kind of read some really cool Robin stories that help celebrate 80 years of the character. So this has been a long recording for us tonight, multiple sessions to get this through, but that's what we do on this show. So if you guys have anything else to add before we chime out?
No, thanks for bearing with me with technical difficulties, but it's after
we made it work.
Yep, we made it work. So, on the behalf of my host, Terence and Ryan, I'm Rob, and you've been listening to the BatmanUniverse.net, and more importantly, you've been listening to Robin, celebrating 80 years this year. We will see you guys next time. Take care. Bye. Thanks for listening to Robin, Everyone Loves the Drake podcast. This has been brought to you by the BatmanUniverse.net. Tim Drake, Robin, and all Batman-related characters are under copyright of DC Comics. This podcast is solely for entertainment purposes, so no infringement is intended by this show. This show is not a good revenue stream. Actually, there's not a stream at all. All music and sound clips are under copyright by their respected copyright holders. So there should be no need to send the Penguins lawyers after us for ill-gotten gains because there are none. You can get a hold of the show a few different ways. We are on Twitter at ELTD Podcast. You can also email in at robineltdpodcast@yahoo.com. Our Facebook page can be found at www.facebook.com/everyonelovesthedrake. And as always, you can message directly over at the BatmanUniverse.net. So email, tweet, or message us. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll read your comments or responses on the show. The show you're listening to can be found a few different ways through iTunes and Windows Media, also over at our host, TVU. Leave us a review on iTunes if you listen there. It'll help spread the word of the show. Make sure you head over to the BatmanUniverse.net, your home for all things Batman and Robin. Thanks for listening to the show and hearing why everyone loves the Drake. We'll see you in a few weeks. Take care.